It's an interesting question that I've thought about for a while because I've worked at companies where there's a message from leadership, from executives that we're all a family. And I don't think it resonates with people. It's never resonated with me. Like, I have a family. And in fact, I'm working to help support my family, but this is not my family. At the same time, I've worked at that place actually that I'm thinking of, as well as other companies where I've developed really strong, tight relationships that are beyond close professional relationships, where I still keep in regular contact with folks that I used to work with at companies where I no longer work. There's the opportunity to develop close personal connections with individuals. What it means to me then is work is an opportunity to run the spectrum from either I'm just doing this because I need to pay my rent, to work is my passion. Work is where I focus my time and my energy, possibly to the exclusion or impediment to other personal relationships or hobbies, so the workaholic type of approach.
Welcome to Dialing In. I'm your host, Jule Salem, and this is the podcast where we talk about the real work of leadership. Not just the wins, but the moments that force us to grow, recalibrate, and reconnect. Let's go to the moment every leader eventually faces. Someone on your team is not meeting expectations. At first, you may hope it corrects itself. You give more time, you offer more guidance, you try to stay patient. But eventually, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. The work is not where it needs to be, the impact is starting to show, and now you're carrying the weight of a conversation you know you need to have, but may not be easy. Because this is where leadership gets real. It is one thing to care about your people, and it's another to protect the standard, the team, and the customer when performance is falling short. In this episode, Andrew Carothers, a leader with deep experience across customer experience, communications, and digital technology, shares a candid leadership moment around performance, trust, and the conversations that either move a team forward or keep everyone stuck in frustration. What stood out to me most in Andrew's story is that accountability does not have to be cold, and connection does not have to mean avoiding the hard truth. The best leaders don't choose between caring about people and protecting the work. They learn how to do both. Let's dial in.
So I had, in two different instances, working with employees that I had inherited when I moved into a new role. I recognized that things were not going well when work being done at a sort of cursory level when we were reviewing the work, which indicated this is somebody who's not, for whatever reason, really diving in and doing a good job, really diving in and doing the work at the level that it needed to be done. So then my first step was to try to understand, well, why is that? Honestly, the first reaction was frustration. I've given you instructions. We've come back to review it. You haven't done it well. It seems like you slapped something together 20 minutes before this call. That's frustrating to me.
What was their reaction? How did they take that in when you approached it that way?
That was my first reaction. My second reaction was before I said anything.
Okay, so that was your own.
That was internal.
Not directly. Okay.
And then stopping myself from saying something or saying something with a tone that I would regret, to then say, well, let's figure out what's going on here. Maybe there's something I don't know about that is a mitigating circumstance related to the time available to do this. Maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe it's a professional thing with other things that I don't know about. Maybe it's a lack of understanding of what to do. And then a concern about, I can't ask my manager how to do this. He's expecting me to know it. And so is it a matter of communication? Is it a matter of knowledge? Is it a matter of time management? Or is it a matter of just not caring? So asking them questions is my role to help guide this person, because there are two issues. There's the work that needs to get done that we're discussing in the moment that's not being done. So how are we going to solve for that?
Right.
Then there's also the longer term. How are we going to not get here next week and the week after that and the week after that? So step one is the emotional reaction. Step two is, hold on, let's not ignore the emotion, but let's park it over here. And let's go then have a conversation to find out, how did the this level of quality of work get here today? It really wasn't a matter of lack of time. There was a certain lack of knowledge about how to proceed, but then there wasn't the steps taken. That leads to why didn't you then ask? Why didn't you ask me for direction? Why didn't you ask one of your colleagues or somebody else? Honestly, why didn't you ask Google? And that was the issue, because the response wasn't something along the lines of, I'm intimidated by you as my manager or by you as a person. I don't think I have an intimidating personality, but maybe I do. But I
Mm-hmm.
got assured that wasn't the issue. So then that leaves to this uncomfortable pause, and the little pause in the conversation, an impasse of, oh, you didn't know what to do. That's fine. But then you didn't take any steps to learn what to do. That's a problem. Then you showed up at the deadline with unusable work, and now we're scrambling to try to save things because you didn't ask earlier on when we had more time. So, big red flag. Fast forward a couple of weeks, same thing happens again.
Okay.
Now we've got a pattern, and it's the pattern that really becomes problematic, because if it happens once, and then I can guide the employee to ask me questions, and I would rather you come to me not knowing what to do and needing more of my time, then we end up in this situation again where it's the last minute, and now I've got to step in and essentially do your work because someone else is waiting to receive this output. That we can work through. But if it happens repeatedly, now we just have a misalignment.
Right. When you've already had the conversation about, okay, I get this is what transpired this time, but
Correct.
can we do different next time? Going back real quick to help others, one, like I give you kudos because you did, before approaching the employee, sounds like you took a pause and did some self reflection, which you'd be surprised a lot of people don't often do. How did you approach the employee in a way that hopefully didn't put them on the defensive?
That's such a good question. I remind myself at least once a week, sometimes daily, that I manage people, and I've also managed by people, by a person.
Mm-hmm.
So to try to put myself in their shoes, try to be empathetic and think, what would I be thinking? What do I think sometimes when I'm in that very same situation with my manager? So I try to remember and use that to be empathetic and think, all right, if I'm going to have a conversation with Sally or John, I need to make sure that I approach this in a way that builds safety to have an open conversation with me so that they can feel comfortable expressing their concerns about their knowledge or their ability. We can then identify what the problem is honestly and then look to solve for that, which may be this isn't the role for you. And that's ultimately where we ended up with this person. Or it may be, well, then let's get you education. Or maybe it's, let me connect you with other people in the company. So without that trust between manager and employee, we're not able to have those open conversations. And without those open conversations, we're not really able to understand the problem and then address the problem. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do is this is, maybe a one-time event, but I don't want it to be a pattern.
Sure.
That's how I'm able to step back and be self-reflective, is by consciously reminding myself, I've been in those shoes before. And how did I want somebody to react to me? And I do it in my personal life too. We're talking about people relationships here. So it's personal life as well as professional life. People are people.
Yes, it's often all one and the same. Yes.
Right.
With the particular individual that you were describing, where unfortunately it sounds like it didn't end up working out successfully, from that experience, how do you know, like, oh, do I need to give it more time? Is there something differently I still need to do to support this employee to help it lead to a positive outcome? What was the thought process that you went through in getting to that decision that it wasn't going to be the right fit?
Well, first off, having consistent conversations with that person to, as I said, try to understand what's the root cause here. Can we address it? And hopefully having created an open enough environment. And I say open enough because I'm a realist. I mean, I'm managing somebody. That person's, there's only so much openness this person's going to share with a manager who might
Of course.
say this is not the right role for you. So, but by hopefully giving them enough space to share it. Then, when the pattern didn't change and the work quality didn't improve, after spending some time to intervene, we scheduled extra time every week to talk about the subject matter at hand for me to mentor this person. I would review communications and then walk through the communications from this person. Other team members I didn't have to do this with, but there were some writing related, communication related issues that were part of the broader specific performance issues we were talking about. So I scheduled extra time on my end to review the communication and then walk through suggested changes and how to think about communicating this topic and put the customer first, and, et cetera. And then
Mm-hmm.
the output. Here's some rubrics that I've created over the years of how to organize thoughts, how to structure things. So try to give them the tools and train them on how to use the tools. That took 2 or 3 months to go through that process and ultimately end up, we're still in the same spot.
Got it.
Now, some people may say you should have just cut that person 3 months earlier and saved yourself the time.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question is like, that's always, I know the big
Yeah.
challenge for leaders is how do I know?
So this wasn't a case where I could tell right from the beginning, this person just simply won't be able to get where they need to be, whether it's a not understanding it or whether it's not caring about it. It was sort of in the muddy middle, right? There are some people that
Mm-hmm.
rock star, and other people are like, okay, I'm going to have a problem here. I think most people are in the middle. Most people where there might be a performance issue specifically are in kind of in the middle. And I err on the side of let me see if I can work with this person myself or align other resources that can help this person and give this person a chance to rise to the occasion. Maybe they've never been asked to do this before. Maybe their previous managers have not cared about this particular thing or they're in a new role. So I want to give them that opportunity. But if they don't rise to the occasion, then it's time to take action. Once I got to that point of, okay, it's time. I've invested a lot of time in this employee at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that's my role as the manager is to, at a high level, figure out on an individual employee basis, because everybody responds to different things and needs different things, how can I get the most out of this employee? Sounds like I'm sort of being very transactional. I'm not. I think in order to get the most out of that employee, I've got to be able to show the vision to that employee, to engage that employee, to give them resources to get, including my time. But if that's just not working out, at least what I've done when it comes time to make a change, there's no surprise to that employee. When I sit down and have then the difficult conversation about this is not the role for you, and let's talk about what your next step is because it's not going to be here in this role. And how can I help them transition to a different role? At least we've built, hopefully, a foundation of trust so that I'm not just coming in and swinging the axe and saying, time to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because how I treat that employee is being watched by every other employee as well. And that's something that I think it's easy to lose sight of because we're so focused in on the one employee. But everyone else is watching how I treat all the employees. And it's one thing to stand up at a team meeting and say the right things and rah, rah, and you guys are the best. And then it's another thing to swing an axe blindly. So I'm very conscious of that as well. I'm sure sometimes I've invested more time, in retrospect, like, yeah, maybe instead of 3 months, after 1 month, I should have pulled the plug. And it would have been better for everybody. Because I'm also conscious of that, also through experience. Like, I'm a person too. I've been in roles where I'm kind of coasting along and I'm not really that engaged. And moving out of that role was a gift. And sometimes I moved because I found something else. And sometimes I moved because somebody said, you need to move.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I moved into something that was more interesting and more engaging for me. So I try to remember those lessons as a leader of what it's like to be led.
Yeah. So I want to unpack a couple things that you've shared. So the first is it sounds like your approach with employees, who are maybe encountering some performance challenges is making sure that you're providing the support that they need, the clarity, and then ultimately the accountability and having that open dialogue and communication along the way so that, worst case scenario, if it doesn't result in them getting to where they need to be, to your point, they're not getting blindsided. It's not coming as a surprise. Even I know the work that I do, I'm in the staffing space. And the clients we work with, I always try to say, hey, at least let's provide one opportunity for them to be made aware of what needs to be remedied before we have to make that tough call. So, love what you shared about that. I mean, sounds like you are very supportive of a manager and leader and providing your team with ample opportunity to know where they need to course correct.
I try to be, and two things there. One, it's not just because I want to be a nice guy and a supportive leader and servant leadership and all that. Yes. And as time intensive as it can be to invest my own time as well as other resources into an employee during this 3 or 4 or 5 month period, whatever it is, that ultimately may end up with this is just not the right fit. And we've confirmed it. There are also plenty of times where that investment leads to the employee rising to the occasion. And what I do know is from just a hard business sense, as much as I might be investing my own time, it's less time that I would need to invest if that employee left or if I cut that employee and then I had to go backfill that
And you
position.
have to start all over.
I've got to do the work myself, while we're trying to find somebody. I've got to start all over with somebody else. Yeah, all of that. So it's almost like it's easier to make more revenue from an existing customer than to
Mm-hmm.
acquire a new customer. It's the same thing with productivity from an employee. So there's that. And the other thing that you mentioned, commenting on how I try to be clear, that's a big unlock for me is when I heard years ago Brene Brown say, clear is kind, or some version of that.
Yes.
And that moved me from thinking, oh, I got to have an uncomfortable conversation. And not necessarily, we need to find you another role, but even just, I'm going to critique your work and it's not that good. And how do I tell somebody your work's not good? Or to thinking in those terms of clear is kind, that removed all of the negative energy that I might bring to that, all of the discomfort of, oh, I'm going to tell somebody their work is not good enough. I'm not being kind. To no, I am being kind by giving them very clear understanding of what the expectations are, where they're stacking up relative to those expectations, and what that means moving forward, which could be great, keep doing what you're doing. It could be, I want you to teach other people how you're doing that. It could be, we need to figure out how to get you some help because it's not good enough. So the whole clear is kind message, unlock for me.
Yes. Yeah. No, you are touching on something that actually I'm very passionate about, which I think is this misconception often really at the core of what we're talking about connection, right? Is that connection, it's either you're connected or you're holding people accountable to an extreme. And so it's how do we combine the two, to your point, helping someone see where things can be improved and delivering and meeting with expectation. While, yes, I know sometimes it's like, oh gosh, how is this person going to feel about me sharing this? Or I know there's some leaders I talk to, they're like, well, are they not going to like me, if I share that? And it's, I find from my own experience that those are the things, and having those discussions is what fosters greater connection and really then the ability for collectively us to achieve greater results. And circling back to earlier, the second point I wanted to make about what you shared is it really ties into what you said at the beginning about connection and getting to know people as individuals, how that ties into helping them be successful, right? So, as you were coaching this particular employee and even getting their feedback along the way of, hey, where are the parts that you feel like you're excelling? This is what you're doing well. That dialogue then is providing leaders the opportunity to get to know their staff individually and on that more personal level, which again kind of brings it full circle in being able to know what their interests are, what they're excelling at, and how we can best support them in being successful.
Well said. Yep, 100%.
So to kind of segue, I know that you did have a positive outcome in using a similar approach. So talk us through what happened, with the other team member.
Yeah, so happy to talk about the positive. So a similar starting point of new role for me, inheriting some employees. So they're wondering, okay, new sheriff in town, what are the expectations? What are we doing here? And this was a case where I was coming in and not continuing what the organization that I was leading, not continuing doing it the way my predecessor had done. So this was a significant shift, trying to explain to the team what we were doing and then to the individuals what their particular role was. And in this case, this one individual, we started to have meetings. She seemed to understand what I was, the explanations I was giving for what the team was going to be doing, where we were going to focus, why, what her part of that was, what my expectations of her were. She seemed excited about it. And then when I started to review the projects that she was working on, the specific tasks, work just wasn't getting done. There seemed to be a lack of expertise in the area where she was supposed to be an expert. And she had already been delving in this area under the previous leader. So this was not something where I was asking her to develop expertise and a week later I'm saying, why aren't you an expert?
Got it.
She came to the table supposedly with this expertise. So she didn't have it. So that was a little bit of like, wait, what's going on here? I thought you had this expertise. So I was asking her to do different things with that expertise than she'd been asked to do before. But now I was wondering, did she even have the expertise? So again, internal conversation in my mind, stop, pause, let's ask some clarifying questions to find out what is the level of expertise that she brings to the table. And ultimately found out that the expertise that she brought to the table was fairly shallow. And the reason for that was because that's the level of expertise that she had been asked to develop before. And so she was bringing a shallow level of expertise, and then other people who had more expertise were essentially directing her activities. And she had enough expertise to be able to know, oh, okay, I know what they're talking about. I know the terminology. I know the acronyms. Sure. And what I was saying was, you're driving the bus. They're the subject matter experts. You are the customer experience expert. And so
you need to go deeper.
You need to go deeper to figure out. So that meant if you're going to show up at meetings about customer experience and guide that conversation, you need to know things about, say, that product area. You don't need to have the level of expertise as the product managers, but you need to know what questions to ask them. So then it became me educating her really about what a journey manager, or whatever you want to call it, would need to do in order to decide what should the experience be for our customers to get them to adopt our products and get value from our products, et cetera. That was a whole level of expertise that she had no idea about. Luckily, she's like, well, that does sound interesting. And that's more interesting than me showing up every day and being told by other people what to do in my job and then just essentially being an order taker and then doing the work that other people tell me to do. So I found a way to unlock her interest in the role by explaining what the role is. So she was happier in the role because she wasn't just showing up being told what to do. She was bringing an area of expertise to conversations that these subject matter experts didn't have. So then I had to teach her and bring it up. I mean, we had to develop an education program so that she understood what are we trying to achieve here. Therefore, what things do we need to know about the customers or their usage or the product or whatever it might be. And then she could go have those guided conversations. I went with her to those conversations initially. I kind of took over the role leading a bunch of those conversations while she kind of listened. So sort of a mentoring, shadowing situation. And then we would debrief afterward. And then she started to figure it out. And then ultimately I stopped going to conversations and we would debrief. And then we got to the step where we just needed to meet regularly and figure out what she should, and I could provide the same type of feedback I was giving to other people because we've gone through the education journey on her part. So now I had an employee who I didn't have to replace and go through that whole rigmarole, which we talked about, and suffer the business impact of that. I had one who was much more engaged and much more satisfied with her role than she had been when I started. And she was producing much greater work and adding much more value to the company, to my team. I was starting to hear positive feedback from those same people before who were like, well, she's fine.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow, she's great. And then I could then report that up my management chain, look at the improvement in my team and the work that we're able to do and the impact that we're having on the things that you care about as leadership in the company. So that started with a difficult conversation or two of let's talk about what my expectations are and your understanding of them. And now we're having a follow-up conversation, which is you're not meeting those expectations. So that was a fork in the road and could have gone either way. I mean, she could have said, I quit. She could have said, I don't understand. She could have not continued to ask questions and develop. And then I would have had to ultimately have a conversation where I say, it's time to find another role. But because I found a way, and I say I mean, she did it, because we jointly found a way to build trust with each other. And with the trust that we built, she felt confident that she had enough runway to learn and to make mistakes along the learning process, and that I would try to help her rather than chastise her if she made a mistake. So she had kind of the freedom to kind of learn, and it turns out what she learned she really enjoyed. It could have been she learned it and she didn't like that either.
True. Yeah.
I don't want to make this a Andrew success story. It was her success story. But it started with that same uncomfortable conversation around performance and not meeting expectations, and me trying to be clear as an act of kindness and the things we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think there's nothing greater in leadership and managing others in when you have those conversations and then you see them blossom and really take ownership of what's needed in their role. For people who can't see me on the podcast, I have this big smile over here because I was getting excited as you were describing that, because I know that's always one of my greatest satisfactions is seeing others bloom. And it could be, even in her case, that just no one had shared with her before what else she needed to bring to the table. And so
Yep.
sometimes just, it's not a lack of desire in the employee's part, but just a lack of awareness.
And that was the situation. And I could have come in and I don't think anybody would have necessarily blamed me for this, but I could have come in and said, well, I'm expecting you to be able to operate at a certain level because that's the role that you've been in.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm stepping in to be your manager, but you should be operating at this level. And I could have come in and said, you're not. I'm the new sheriff. Time to go.
Yeah.
And I'll bring in people who can. But instead, we took this different approach. And employee number one that we talked about, it ended up not working out. Employee number two, it did work out. But even with the one where it didn't work out, in both of these cases, all the other employees could see what was going on.
Yeah. I know when I talk to employees, and I have had similar discussions where I'm like, hey, this may not ultimately be the place you want to be long term, right? But how can we help develop your skills that can help you help the company in the meantime, but also apply to what you may want to do longer term? And I always get these like surprised looks of like, is it okay to say this isn't, where I want to be forever, what I want to be doing forever? And I'm always, absolutely, right? We all have our paths in life that we have to go on.
Yeah. Coincidentally, I have a college intern starting on Monday for summer intern. And what I told her last week as we were preparing for her start, I said, look, I'm not assuming that this is the role you're in here, or even the team that you're going to be joining for part of, is what you want to do for the rest of your life. If you're like me when I was your age, I had no idea. I did 2 or 3 internships before I found the first job, and then I was in that job, and that led to that was the PR job, or that led to opening up the PR career. And then I'm not in PR. I haven't been in PR for years. I moved into marketing, and then I moved out of marketing into CX purely by accident, right place, right time. This is my passion. This is what I love to do. But if you'd asked me about that at the beginning of my career, first of all, the profession nobody ever heard of them, could spell CX or even heard of it. So it wasn't a thing. And that's fine. Our needs change, our knowledge changes. That's fine.
And sometimes it takes trying the things to know what you like, what you don't like. So, yeah.
There's a lot of value in trying something and realizing I don't like this.
Voicing those things.
About voicing those things.
Yeah.
Because then it gets into this sort of boss employee traditional approach, and I still have to pay the rent and like fear. I try to communicate with my words and even more so with my actions. You're not going to lose your job. You're going to strengthen the worker leadership bond between you and me if we have those open conversations. And I'm going to try really hard not to end up using that against you later on down the line. I'm not going to come down 3 months later and have a conversation and say, I may have a conversation that says this isn't the right role for you, but I'm not going to bring back that baggage and say, remember when you told me you didn't want to do it? Like, no, that's not fair either. So
Right. Now, I will caveat that because I will have we'll have an open dialogue about what aspects of their role they enjoy the most, what are the things they don't like so much. And I think sometimes there's an expectation that the responsibilities they share that they don't like, that's going to be an automatic, like off their plate. And so I always caveat and say, hey, it's good to know this, but still need you to do that in the meantime. And we'll, to the extent we can, work to transition some of those things. So,
great point.
yeah.
Great point.
So it's always that balance. So
it is not employee, tell me what you want to do, and I'll shape the role around that.
yeah, I mean, we're running a business. We can't pick and
Exactly.
choose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, as we look to wrap up, one kind of final question I wanted to ask you, particularly with your background in AI as well, is this is something that's really top of mind for me right now is, as more and more companies are utilizing and leveraging AI technologies, what are your thoughts on what leaders should be mindful of in incorporating those while still balancing connection with their team?
So, still trying to build connection with teams while introducing AI. I think there are a couple of things. One is recognize they're going to be afraid. They're going to
Mhm.
be afraid that this is the first step in them losing their job. And then they might be angry that, wait a second, are you going to use me to train AI to then replace me? So there might be some anger there too. So I think it's important to one, be transparent. And to be transparent and say, look, there's a business imperative to do more with less or to do more with the same. So less doesn't necessarily mean fewer headcount. It may mean fewer resources, dollar investment. So explaining, here's the business case for bringing AI in. And here's how we're going to do that. And then also explaining, to me, this is a key unlock. And when I was at Cisco and bringing in AI into our digital team, number one approach was explaining where we're going to start applying AI, which was not across the whole organization, but certain areas where, the low hanging fruit, but training and making sure everyone in the organization had visibility to that. So there wouldn't be these rumors of, wait a second, I hear that part of the organization is using AI
Mm.
and we're not, either creating, FOMO or jealousy or creating a fear of like, why didn't they tell me? And then people start to fill the vacuum with their own narrative. So it's explaining to everybody, here's where we're using it, low hanging fruit, here's why, and training everybody on how to become comfortable with AI and how to leverage it in their work, which does two things. We explicitly said, whether you stay in this role or move at some point in your career, whether you stay at Cisco or move, you're probably not going to be in this role for the next 20 years of your career. You will need to know how to use AI. So let's train you to know how to use AI so that you can be a rock star in this role. And by the way, this is great for your career. So we were investing in their development and their career. It was going to help us out, but it was also going to help them out. So that helped lower the temperature and the fear gauge. So don't think of it as replacing you. Think of it as accelerating the value you're able to add. And here's why. And then goes without saying, you have to actually think that way, right? You can't be making stuff up to try to ease their fears, and then you're actually going to fire them 6 months from now. Level set with that.
Yeah.
But it's being transparent about why you're going to introduce AI, how you're going to introduce it, making sure that people have a stake in its success, which, if for no other reason, is their own personal development, which is going to help them in their career moving forward. Because I don't think we're going to put the genie back in the bottle, the AI genie back in the bottle.
It's there. Yeah, it's out there.
So rather than be afraid and shrink from AI being introduced into their job, it's an opportunity for them to embrace it and learn how to use it the best way possible. Learn by doing. So sure, take classes and learn, of course, but there's no better way to learn than by doing. And now we're giving them an opportunity to learn by doing and apply. And then give them the freedom to then come back and say, look, I know you asked me to use AI to do X, and I am doing X, By the way, I've learned some ways to really optimize that, or maybe where it doesn't work so well. But I've also thought about ways to use AI to do Y. And like, so now we're
Mm,
starting to unlock potential in the creative mind. And that AI doesn't do that, right? So we need humans to not only review the work, as I mentioned before, but unlock the creativity of how could we apply this? Oh my goodness, look at all these different ways we could do things. That's great for them. That's great for them as employees. That's great for the business. And that's all about the human connection.
yes. Yeah. And I think you just brought it full circle for us. Again, leveraging AI to better themselves as humans. And it sounds like, your recommendation is making sure that organizations that are incorporating this, from your experience, being open and transparent about how it is to be used so that across organizationally, everybody's looped in and going back to what we were talking about before, no surprises.
Those are exactly. Yeah.
So, with that, I know, Andrew, others might want to connect with you from hearing you on the podcast. What is the best way for them to find you?
I welcome it. The best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Andrew Carothers on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that we include the link in the show notes as well. I feel like we can continue this dialogue so much longer, but I really appreciate your time today and have enjoyed the discussion. And thanks for being here.
It's been great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Dialing In. I hope this conversation brought you something meaningful, whether it's a new way to lead through complexity, a reminder of the power of connection, or simply the comfort of knowing you're not navigating leadership alone. If you found value in today's episode, I'd be grateful if you'd share it with a colleague, a leader in your circle, or someone who could benefit from the insights we explored. The more leaders we bring into this dialogue, the more positive change we can create. And if you have a story of disconnection, reconnection, or breakthrough that you think would help others, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out, tell me a bit about your journey, and let's explore whether it could be a fit for a future episode. This episode of Dialing In was produced by Michael Osborne of 14th Street Studios, edited by Talia Anili, and mixed by Morgan Honecker. Until next time, keep dialing in one moment of connection at a time.